Okay, before I say anything else, this video is not sponsored, like in any way, shape, or form. They did not pay me to say this. They didn't incentivize me to say this. They didn't give me anything. I legitimately just went to Tokyo Game Show today, just looking at games and trying things out, and I found out that Neverness to Everness actually had a booth there at Tokyo Game Show. Now, this is weird to me because as far as I know, Neverness to Everness was a really new reveal. Like, this game had no info on it, and then they just dropped the trailer, and everyone was like, whoa, that looks so cool, and then proceeded to forget about it because they were playing 17 other gacha games. And usually when games reveal in the gacha space, it's usually like, okay, the game is revealed, now we're gonna have 3 betas and the game will be out in 2 years, and that's like how it feels like it goes every single time. But Neverness to Everness actually had a playable version of it here at Tokyo Game Show, and they actually let me just record over the shoulder footage of me playing the game. They didn't, I'm assuming they didn't have OBS on the computer or something, I don't really know. So anyways, everyone had like a 10-minute timer when they went in to go play the game, but they actually gave me like 45 minutes because I was recording and, you know, free promo and whatever. So I figured that I would just talk about it and give you guys my honest first impressions. Actually, that's not entirely true because I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't like it. There would not be a video on this game if I did not think that this was awesome. By the way, if you can't tell, this is like completely unscripted. I'm just kind of watching the video back as I'm talking about it. Okay, so what is NTE or Neverness to Everness? If you guys don't know what this is, it's basically a gacha game that was recently revealed, and it's sort of like an urban fantasy gacha game, so they kind of have some fantasy elements, but it's meant to take place sort of in the city. There's cars and things like that, and you can actually get a car and customize it. You can drive it around, which is super sick. There's traversal of buildings and stuff, and then your combat system feels sort of similar, at least to me, a mix between some Genshin and some Wuthering Waves. Now, honestly, if you've been playing all of the recent gacha games, this probably doesn't feel like anything super important or new to you, and that's totally fine, because I get it. I'm a content creator for gacha games, and I've played like all of the new ones that have come out that have been supposedly competing with each other, and ultimately I burnt out, which is why my upload schedule has slowed down so much, because I'm so tired of playing the same gameplay loop and the same gacha games over and over and over. So when I tried Neverness to Everness and I actually really liked the game, it was super surprising to me. I found myself just playing through this sort of like trial demo thing. Well, actually, I think it's just the full game, but like they limited your playtime and they specifically wanted you to avoid parts that were like unfinished. So, you know, normal stuff. But I found myself getting completely sucked into all the different things there were to learn and know about the game. Anyways, I've been yapping so long about this. Let me tell you specifically what I really liked about the game. First off, when you get into the game, the opening for the game is different, which I know is like the bare minimum, but hear me out. Dude, I'm tired of games where you like wake up and you have amnesia and there's just like a floating thing next to you, and then you have to like listen to this really high-pitched yapping and they talk for you instead of you actually having dialogue. Like, I just really hate that. I'm so tired of that. NTE doesn't do any of that. They kind of just are like, oh yeah, you need to help us with this like mission, and then you just get kind of thrown into it, and it's really, really cool and like modern. And the environment they throw you into is so interesting and appealing. It's not your normal fantasy setting. It's not post-apocalyptic. It's like this urban sort of like, oh, I'm gonna run through this like train station, but there's grass and trees everywhere too. I don't know if eco-brutalism is the right way to describe it, because I don't feel like the buildings are quite that complex. But the opening they throw you into is a lot more exciting than some of the other stuff I've played. Maybe again, it's just because I'm tired of the whole like amnesia trope, and I think they even mentioned something about this character not knowing who they are, remembering who they are, but like that's not the main point they try to draw across. It's just like a side plot of like, oh yeah, you'll figure it out later anyways, go do this mission, you know. And I don't know, I just had a lot of fun with that. And the next thing I noticed, I mean, aside from the gameplay stuff, because I'll get into that in a little bit, all of the cutscenes, the characters' expressions and the way they do the cutscenes is so, I mean, I just said expressions, but it's expressive. Like when I played Zenless Zone Zero, I felt like I was watching like a movie when I was in cutscenes, and Neverness to Everness feels like I'm watching an anime in these cutscenes as well, which is like super cool, because I think that's a super important part to storytelling. If you're gonna have characters yapping forever and ever and ever, which is a commonality between all of these Chinese gacha games, it is so incredibly important to have something moving on screen, because god damn it, this entire generation has been ruined by Subway Surfers videos next to Reddit story times on TikTok. There needs to be some sort of movement there, or we're going to like stop caring. And I feel like it's just so incredibly important to retention, and it also shows that the devs want to create an experience that is enjoyable through multiple steps of the way. There's also some humor in there that didn't land super well with me because it was in Japanese, and for some reason when I am playing video games, I really struggle to pay attention during JP dub. Like with anime I can do it for some reason, but with games I can't. I don't know, maybe I'm just weird weird. But even though I don't understand Japanese, the humorous moments actually hit with me because I could see the effects in the background and the characters' facial expressions and the way the sounds worked. It just like made it very, very clear what was happening. And I don't know, I feel like in a way they're expressing it as if you're a toddler, but not explaining it like you're a toddler. It's just the visual stimulation is really good for my ADHD brain. Fortnite's oversaturation, constant action combat has absolutely obliterated the attention span of multiple generations of gamers. And this game like really combats that, which I have just been super happy with. Oh, and also they have a skip button, which I can't believe I'm saying is like a positive thing, as if that shouldn't be the norm, but I guess maybe we're moving back towards the norm and away from the abnormalities. I guess though this game is actually anything but normal, and I really like that about it. You've probably seen some of the background gameplay already, and it's 30 FPS, so it will look a little bit choppier probably on the YouTube playback, but when I was playing it, it was a smooth 120 FPS, baby. That's right, it is completely unlocked at 120 FPS. God bless. I don't understand why games are limiting to 60 FPS. That is such a stupid decision. Like, unless your game is literally incapable of running at 120, but it is the year 2024, please do better. So yeah, buttery smooth 120 FPS, and honestly, the game just looks super polished. You know, that was one of the other things that surprised me. They had a playable demo, which is great, but the game is also super well polished, which means that it could honestly be pretty close to release, but I don't want to get my hopes up because doing that could just be bad for your happiness and stuff like that. But yeah, the polish is really insane. Compared to Tower of Fantasy, this game feels much more, I don't want to say AAA, but it feels like it had a really high budget and some very talented developers working on it, because I feel like the movement in this, the animations of everything just looks so incredibly good. And I actually really like the character designs. I have heard some people don't really like the sort of like oversaturated stuff, but I love it. I mean, again, Fortnite, Subway Surfers, brain rot. Oh, and while we're talking about the movement, the movement feels very fast-paced, which is good. I think some games can feel kind of sluggish based on the inputs or like how characters move. I guess, like, I don't know, maybe that's just a personal preference thing, but like Monster Hunter is an example. A lot of people really like the weight of Monster Hunter, but I like the weight of Grand Blue, which is like, it doesn't feel that heavy. And in this case, when you're playing like an anime sort of game, I think it makes more sense to have less weight, and I think that did that very well. To be clear, I'm not really hating on Monster Hunter or anything. I love Monster Hunter. I plan on covering Wilds when it comes out, and I think that game's really, really cool, but I'm just saying that game has like pretty slow feeling movement in comparison, whereas this game feels very reactive and very fast-paced. I'm not going to get into all of the mechanics of the combat and everything because I feel like that could be a whole nother video and I want to milk you guys for ad revenue. But what I do really like about Neverness to Everness is, well, honestly, it's a couple of things about the combat. First off, you have your normal QE thing going on. You have your skill and your ultimate. And those skill and ultimates just feel so impactful. I think it might just be like a design thing. I don't think it's like, oh yes, all skills and ultimates are impactful, but I feel like they did a really good job of making it feel like they just hit. But you also have QTEs as well, so if a character's icon on the top right just starts flashing, or maybe not the top right, but the right side starts flashing, you can switch to them and you get like some sort of special like intro skill, similar to Wuthering Waves. But also, I don't feel like the combat is quite as complex as Wuthering Waves, which I think is a really good thing. I honestly think that Wuthering Waves is a super good game, but the combat can be less than appealing to a lot of people that don't want to learn all the intricacies of it, so having combat that's less complex than that is actually kind of nice. But as I mentioned before, it feels somewhere between Genshin and Wuthering Waves, where there's some mechanics of like real-time action, quick combat, but there's also a sort of system that is similar to elemental reactions. Now, I'm not gonna go into a ton of detail about it because one, I don't really want to be wrong, and I didn't learn everything there is to know during my 45 minutes of gameplay. And two, this is probably an earlier build, I'm assuming, because, you know, it's at the convention and the game isn't released yet. So things could change, but there are interactions between different elements of damage that you can deal, which means there is gonna be quite a bit of complexity to combat. You do have perfect dodges, and actually the way dodges work in this game is super interesting. I really like how they did it. So, you know, in most games you can just spam dodge and it takes like stamina, and by most games I mean specifically Genshin Impact. Well, in this game you actually have 3 dodges with cooldowns, and these dodges will allow you to perfect dodge, And when you run out of dodges, then you can't do that, so you actually get punished for dodge spamming. You cannot spam dodges, at least not with any of the characters that I have right now, and I think that's actually good. I think that that means that you do have to time your dodges. You're gonna have to learn not to spam, but it's not so complex that like it punishes people for being bad at the game because you have 3 whole dodges. Like, you're fine. And if you time an attack when you're done dodging, or at the right time, you kind of do this like really powerful hit, and it just feels really satisfying. Not quite like a parry in Wuthering Waves, but it just, you know, it hits different. But speaking of harder hitting, so you also sort of have this like break bar on bosses, and when it's completely full, you'll like stun the boss and they'll take some extra damage and they'll be like remaining stunned for a second. And it's really sick. I like how they do that. And because that is a thing in the game, they also have more stats. So not only do you have to worry about like your own scalings and stuff, but you also have to worry about like your break, or not break, your stun scaling, break, no, maybe it is break, filling up that gauge, how fast it fills up, and then I'm sure there's other multipliers that go into it too. I guess basically what I'm saying is that there's a lot more to sort of think about when it comes to min-maxing characters in this, and the combat feels different enough to where it's gonna be interesting. Maybe the characters are all gonna end up being built the same, like in Genshin Star Rail and every other game, where it's like, oh yes, attack, damage, crit, but at the same time, because there are sort of like elemental reactions, and because there is reactionary combat and breaks, I think there is going to be a lot of room for playing around with that and optimizing teams and stuff, and I think that's really cool. I don't know why I emphasized cool so hard there. But I guess that kind of ties into the next thing, which is going to be character improvements. So basically you have like talent trees. It's not really a tree. It's kind of like talents in Genshin Impact. You kind of just have like your skill, your basic attack, your ultimate, but you also have some passive abilities, which I mean, I guess are also similar. But on top of that, you kind of have traces. Maybe traces is actually the best way to describe it. You get some bonus stuff there, and you'll fill that out and you'll improve your characters and make them stronger. Pretty normal stuff. But all in all, it feels like there's a lot of progression and complexity to it. There are weapons, there are probably going to be some kind of artifacts, but we couldn't actually look at those in this version. I'm assuming that's because things are not finalized, so, you know, that's totally fine. One other thing I will say, I don't know if I'll have the footage for this by the time I'm making the video, because Gotcha Smack was actually there, and that was really cool. I got to meet him in person, and he actually fought one of the bosses. I didn't get to fight the motorcycle boss, but he found it, and if I get the footage, I'll put it in the video now. But basically, the boss fights seem pretty dang cool. There is a downside right now, which I'm assuming they're gonna fix because we complained about it for 30 minutes, but they don't have a lock-on feature for the bosses, which can be a little annoying, so I'm hoping they add that. So that is one negative, but that's like easily fixed, I feel like, with some development time, so hopefully they fix it. And you actually get to the motorcycle boss by just driving through the city, finding a motorcycle on the road, following him through the tunnel, and following him until he gets pissed off, and you get this whole cutscene, and then you end up fighting him, and it's actually really sick. Something I was told by the staff there while I was playing through the game, and I didn't actually encounter any of this in the city, is that there are different boss spawns depending on the time of day and the weather, which I think is really cool. I think that could be annoying if you have to like farm for certain characters and they require certain bosses to sort of like level up, and then you can't find that boss because you can't force a weather change and stuff. But what I will say is it was absolutely sick to just be running around the city, which I'll talk about in just a second as well, but you probably already see gameplay of it. And while you're just running around the city, like, oh, it starts raining and now there's water everywhere, and like you're running in water puddles, and the NPCs, all the people around you just start reacting and like pulling out umbrellas and stuff. I think that's a really cool detail, and actually the attention to detail in this game just seems really good. Now, we didn't get any footage of this, but while we're on the topic of the city as well, there is a sort of like room system where you can kind of just have a room. I don't know what you can do with that because I didn't really get to play it, but I'm assuming they're gonna have some sort of sandbox stuff. They didn't tell me, so. But in the city, there are other things to do than just sit in your room and rot all day. You can run around the city, run around at the speed of sound, got places to go, gotta follow the rainbow, all that. You can run up walls if you have the cat girl with the red hair, and that's really quite disorienting, but it's also really cool. I think that you'll kind of get used to it, maybe, hopefully. I don't know. Honestly, maybe we'll never get used to it, and then we'll just start projectile vomiting everywhere. But I think it's a cool idea and a cool mechanic. And also, for other world traversal things, you get a car, which I think I mentioned earlier. You can take it into an auto shop, you can change the car, change the stats of the car, you can also unlock different cars, and you can drive around, I almost called it San Andreas, but that's not actually where that is at all. Anyways, you can drive around. It's pretty cool. If you run over the people, nothing happens, unfortunately, or fortunately. I don't know. Guys, I guess it depends on your target demographic. GTA players might be disappointed, but you can like run over different things in the environment, which I think is pretty cool. You can get some 6 speed, and I think just having world traversal in that way is really, really dope. Other things. I guess the last few things that I have to say about like sort of the UI and the experience is that I think that the UI is, while it is very similar to Genshin, I think that like the character screen is something that I feel like is really fresh, looks super good, and I think that like a lot of the ways you interact with things in the environment is pretty different. You know, I had heard that this studio made Tower of Fantasy, and my expectations were super low. As someone that was just watching gacha games come out and just absolutely copied each other and every single mechanic and everything about each other, I wasn't super excited about it. I thought the trailer was cool. I watched the trailer, that was my genuine reaction. I was like, oh, that's pretty sick, you know, like that looks neat. But I wasn't expecting to like this game when I went into it. I genuinely thought this game was just gonna be like, all right. I got hands-on with the game, and I absolutely love it so far. Like, when I tell you, I was genuinely shocked at how fun this game was to play, even just for the short 45 minutes I got to play, with some intro yapping storytelling and stuff. It was absolutely so sick. I think the biggest problem that I have with a lot of gacha games nowadays is that they do the yoink and twist thing, where basically you just look at whatever's doing well and you try to take that and make it your own thing. Except the problem is that the other gacha games aren't making it their own thing. They're just yoinking. There's no twist anywhere. It's just yoink. And I feel like this game actually did the twisting. And because they did the twisting, the game is actually, it has its own unique identity, and it looks really, really good. It plays super well. And man, I am just so stoked for Neverness to Everness. I did not expect it to like it this much. And I really, really hope this game releases soon in a complete state. I don't want them to rush it to completion or anything, because this game is awesome. It has new stats for us to think about, different ways to think in combat. The character designs, I just really love them. I think they're super cute. I'm glad they're embracing real cat girls and not giving us fake cat girls. I think that's a really good step up. Anyways, guys, if you watch this on 1.5 speed, my condolences. You probably didn't understand a single thing I was saying, and if you're not a native English speaker, I feel even worse for you. But those are my honest first impressions of the game after playing at Tokyo Game Show. I really like this game. I was absolutely blown away. And I hope that you guys will be too. I hope that we can get a chance to show this on stream at some point and show you guys live everything about it, perhaps with some better quality and everything. This game is awesome. I really have such high hopes for it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Leave questions in the comments, smile. Oh, by the way, I recorded this whole thing in a room in Japan because everyone else was like gonna go to karaoke, and I was like, damn, I really just want to make a video about this game because I loved it so much. But if you're wondering why the audio sucks, that's why.